The crystal chandelier cast fractured light across Mom's mahogany dining table as her words hit me like shards of glass. Your siblings brought me pride. You brought me shame. The familiar sting of her disapproval burned through my chest, but this time something else stirred beneath it, a cold, calculated calm I'd never felt before. My brother David snorted into his wine glass. Classic Sarah. Always the disappointment. My sister Claire's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against her champagne flute as she smirked. Dad just stared at his plate, as he always did when Mom went for blood. The leather diary felt warm against my palm where I'd been clutching it under the table for the past hour, waiting for this exact moment. 27 years of these family dinners. 27 years of being the punchline, the cautionary tale, the daughter who couldn't quite measure up to David's partnership at the law firm or Claire's orthopedic surgery practice. But today was different. Today I held the truth in my hands, and with it, the power to detonate their carefully constructed world of superiority. Mom, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. Why did you hide the truth from me? I placed the diary on the table with deliberate care, right next to her untouched creme brulee. The brown leather binding looked harmless enough, like any journal you'd find at a bookstore, but I watched her face drain of color as recognition dawned. Her silver fork clattered against the porcelain plate. The sound echoed like a death knell through their perfect dining room, where I'd been systematically humiliated for decades. Where I'd internalized their poison until I believed I was fundamentally flawed, unworthy of the love they showered on each other while treating me like an unwelcome stranger at their table. How did you, she stammered, reaching for it with trembling fingers that bore her grandmother's emerald ring. I found it when cleaning out Grandma's attic last week, tucked behind her hope chest, wrapped in that blue silk scarf she always wore to church. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the sudden silence. Funny thing about secrets, Mom. They have a way of surfacing when you least expect them. David's wine glass froze halfway to his lips. Claire's smirk vanished like smoke. Dad's shoulders tensed in that familiar way that meant he knew a storm was coming. But this wasn't just any storm. This was a hurricane 27 years in the making. The most delicious irony, I continued, savoring each word like fine wine, is that you spent decades making me feel like I was the broken one, the defective daughter who could never earn your love no matter how hard I tried. But it was never about me, was it? It was about your guilt, your shame, your complete inability to love a child who reminded you daily of your own failures. Mom's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Sarah, please. Please what? Please don't tell the truth. Please keep pretending that your emotional abuse was somehow my fault. I picked up the diary, holding it like the weapon it had become. I've spent my entire adult life in therapy, trying to figure out what was wrong with me, trying to understand why I could never be enough for my own mother. And all this time, you knew exactly why. The silence stretched taut as a wire, ready to snap. Claire reached for the diary with shaking hands, but I pulled it back. Oh no, sister dear. You don't get to read it here. You don't get the luxury of processing this information privately, away from the mess you helped create. I looked around the table at their stricken faces, faces that had watched me struggle and never once offered help. You all participated in this. You all chose to follow her lead rather than question why one child was treated so differently. Enjoy your family dinner, I said, walking toward the front door with measured steps. I hope you choke on your secrets. The silence followed me like a living thing, thick and suffocating. I had my hand on the brass doorknob, the same one I'd turned thousands of times as a child, always leaving these dinners feeling smaller than when I'd arrived, when Mom's scream shattered the quiet. A sound so raw and primal it made my teeth ache. So desperate it seemed to claw at the walls themselves. The sound of a woman realizing that her carefully constructed lies had finally caught up with her. She'd reached the last page, the page that revealed she'd known for years that I deserved better, but had been too selfish to do anything about it. My name is Sarah, and if you want to know what happened after that, subscribe, because this story, it's just getting started. 3 days later, I was still holed up in the Riverside Motel on the outskirts of town, surviving on vending machine coffee that tasted like burnt regret and gas station sandwiches that crumbled between my fingers like everything else in my life. My phone buzzed constantly, David's name flashing across the screen in angry red letters, Claire's voice growing more shrill with each voicemail. I let them all go to silence. For the first time in my life, I held all the power, and I wasn't about to relinquish it for their convenience. The diary lay open on the threadbare bedspread, its pages yellowed with age and heavy with secrets that had festered for 27 years. Mom's handwriting sprawled across the lined paper in that careful script she'd used for grocery lists and birthday cards, but these words carried a weight that made my chest tight. October 15th, 1997. The adoption papers are finalized today. Sarah will never know. She's barely 3. She won't remember her birth parents or those months in foster care. Robert thinks I'm being cruel by not telling her, but how do I explain that she's not mine? That I could never love her the way I love David and Claire? The entries continued for years, documenting Mom's struggle with depression, her guilt over not bonding with me, her desperate attempts to fake maternal love while battling resentment that grew like poison in her heart. Each page revealed another crack in the foundation of everything I'd believed about myself. But it was the final entry that had triggered Mom's scream, the one that revealed she'd been living with this secret for my entire adult life, watching me suffer under the weight of her rejection while knowing exactly why she couldn't love me. May 22nd, 2023. If there's any justice in this world, someday she'll discover how much she means to people who actually deserve her love. I pray she finds a family that cherishes her the way I never could. She deserves better than what I've given her, but I've been too cowardly to set her free. The cruelest part wasn't the rejection. It was the knowledge that she'd understood my pain and chosen to let it continue rather than face her own cowardice. By dawn on the 4th day, with rain drumming against the motel window like fingertips on a coffin lid, I'd made a decision that would alter the trajectory of my entire life. But more than that, it would be the ultimate revenge against a family that had spent decades making me feel worthless. I would find where I truly belonged, and in doing so, I would show them exactly what they had thrown away. I packed my single suitcase, the same one I'd bought for college, back when I still believed I could earn their love through achievement, and drove north. Following breadcrumbs from the diary, an address scribbled in the margins, a town name underlined twice, I headed toward a small town in Montana where my birth parents had lived before dying in a car accident when I was 2. Though I had no memories of it, the name gripped me with a strange familiarity. Millfield. Population, 3,847. That's what the weathered sign at the town limits read, its paint peeling like old skin. The Ponderosa Diner sat at the corner of Main and First Street, its red vinyl booths and black and white checkerboard floor frozen in 1962. The smell hit me the moment I pushed through the glass door, bacon grease and coffee, cinnamon rolls, and something indefinably homey. Something I'd never experienced in all those sterile family dinners back home. I slid into a corner booth and ordered coffee from a waitress whose silver name tag read Dolores in flowing script. She was maybe 60, with steel gray hair pulled into a neat bun, and the kind of weathered hands that spoke of decades spent in honest work. "You're not from around here," she said, setting down a thick ceramic mug. It wasn't a question. No, but my birth parents were. Jake and Marie Hoffman. They died in 1997. Dolores's hand froze halfway to the coffee pot, her knuckles white against the black plastic handle. The silence stretched long enough for doubt to creep in. Had I said something wrong? Then her eyes welled with tears, catching the fluorescent light like prisms. "Sweet Mary and Joseph," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "You're their little girl." She studied my face with hungry eyes, taking in details I'd never thought to catalog. "I can see Marie in your eyes. Jake in the stubborn set of your chin. Honey, this whole town mourned when we lost them, especially when we heard their baby girl got sent away to some family in the city." My heart hammered against my ribs. "You knew them?" "Knew them?" Dolores shook her head gently. "Honey, Jake taught my youngest boy woodworking at the high school. Marie helped me plant my first garden, back when I was too proud to ask for help but too ignorant to grow anything on my own. She wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. Half this town would have taken you in. We begged the state to let us keep you here, but they said you needed a family with better resources. The irony hit like a gut punch. While my adoptive family had all the better resources, they had no love to give. Meanwhile, an entire town had been ready to wrap me in the kind of unconditional acceptance I'd spent my life craving. That afternoon, I found myself in the town library, a converted Victorian house with creaking floorboards and the comforting scent of old paper. Mrs. Chun, the librarian, stepped out from behind the circulation desk holding a cardboard box, like she'd been waiting 27 years to hand it to me. "Jake's students made this for you," she said softly. "The high school kids, Marie's garden club, everyone helped. They always hoped you'd come back someday." Inside were tokens of love, grief, and hope deferred. Hand-carved wooden toys that fit perfectly in my adult hands, pressed flowers from Marie's garden, still vibrant between sheets of wax paper. Photographs of my parents I'd never seen, laughing at a town picnic, dancing at someone's wedding, cradling a dark-haired toddler who looked exactly like me. At the bottom of the box lay a small leather journal, Jake's woodworking notes. It was filled with sketches, blueprints for a childhood that never happened. A rocking horse with a flowing mane, a bookshelf just tall enough for picture books, a toy chest with Sarah carved in delicate script across the lid. My fingers trembled as I traced his lines, plans for the little girl he never got to raise. A life interrupted by tragedy and the cruel irony of being placed with people who never saw the gift they were given. "There's something else," Mrs. Chin said, her voice gentler now. "Your parents bought a house 3 months before they died. It's been sitting empty all these years. The town council kept it up with tax money, hoping someday." My breath caught. "The house is still there?" She nodded. "The keys are at City Hall. And honey, the mortgage was paid off with their life insurance. It's yours now, free and clear." The house stood on Maple Street like a patient sentinel, a modest blue craftsman with a wraparound porch and overgrown flower gardens that whispered of neglect and hope in equal measure. Lilac bushes flanked the front steps, their purple blooms just beginning to fade in the late afternoon sun. My hands trembled as I turned the skeleton key in the front door, brass and heavy with history. The lock gave way with a soft click that seemed to echo through time itself. Inside, dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through lace curtains that Marie had probably chosen. The furniture was covered in clean white sheets, but underneath I found evidence of the life I should have had. A rocking chair positioned by the window in what would have been my nursery, its blue-painted slats worn smooth by use. Built-in bookshelves lined one wall, their empty spaces waiting for picture books and bedtime stories. A hand-carved toy chest sat beneath the window, its lid decorated with painted daisies and "Sarah" etched in the same careful script I'd seen in Jake's notebook. I sank into the rocking chair and called David, my fingers shaking as I dialed. This was the moment I'd been building toward, the revelation that would shatter their comfortable narrative about being the real family. "God, Sarah, where the hell are you?" His voice cracked with something between anger and fear. "Mom's been in bed for 3 days straight. Dad's beside himself. Claire thinks you've had some kind of breakdown." "I'm in Montana," I said, savoring the words. "I'm sitting in my birth parents' house. The house they bought for me before they died. The house that's been waiting for me to come home." Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Then, "Birth parents? What the hell are you talking about?" I told him everything, the diary, the adoption, Mom's 27 years of guilt and resentment, the town that had wanted to keep me, the house that had been waiting for my return, the family that had loved me sight unseen while his family treated me like an unwelcome burden. David listened without interrupting, his breathing heavy through the phone. "That explains so much," he finally whispered. "The way she treated you, the distance, the constant criticism. Claire and we learned to follow her lead because it was easier than questioning it. But it never felt right, Sarah. Deep down, we knew something was wrong." "The beautiful thing," I said, looking out at the mountain peaks silhouetted against the evening sky, "is that I don't need your guilt or your belated recognition. I've found something better. I've found where I actually belong. What are you going to do? I'm going to stay. I'm going to build the life my real parents planned for me. And I'm going to let this town love me the way I was always meant to be loved. I paused, letting the implications sink in. You can all keep your perfect family dinners. I finally have somewhere better to be. 2 weeks later, the past began speaking to me. Not in words, but in wood. I was learning to use Jake's woodworking tools under the patient guidance of Bill Martinez, who'd been his teaching assistant at the high school and had maintained the workshop in the converted garage behind the house. My hands, soft from years of pushing papers, grew calloused and strong. Your dad was planning to teach you all this, Bill said, watching me struggle with a particularly stubborn piece of oak. He had notebooks full of projects mapped out by age, simple birdhouses when you turned 5, jewelry boxes at 10, a hope chest for your 16th birthday. Each day brought new discoveries that felt like gifts from parents I'd never known but who had loved me more in 2 years than my adoptive family had in 27. In Jake's workshop, I found partially completed projects he'd started during my first 2 years of life. A miniature rocking chair sized for a toddler, painted sunshine yellow with daisies around the edges. A set of alphabet blocks with letters carved deep enough for small fingers to trace. Each object felt like a whisper from the past, until one of them shouted. Then I found it, a folded letter in fading ink. Sarah, if you're reading this, it means you found your way home. And we always hoped you would. We never wanted to give you up. But after my cancer diagnosis and Jake's accident at the mill, we were told by social services we weren't fit to raise a newborn. No steady income, no stable health. They didn't even let us say goodbye. We chose the family who adopted you because they promised they'd stay in touch, send photos, give you a chance at more. They didn't keep that promise. And we were told it was too late to fight. But we never stopped loving you. Not for a day. Love. Mom, Murray. My fingers traced the ink as if touching her voice, letting the truth soak into me like summer rain after a long drought. All my life, I believed I'd been discarded like I didn't matter. But the truth was far more human, tragic, tender, and cruel in the way bureaucracy often is. The garden was chaos, sunflowers tangled, vines overrun, weeds claiming everything. Marie's garden had gone wild without her tending, but Eleanor Vasquez, her old gardening partner, appeared one morning with worn gloves and a determined expression. We worked side by side in the early morning coolness, our hands deep in soil that still held traces of Marie's careful cultivation. She talked about you constantly, Eleanor said, dividing overgrown perennials. Plan this whole garden around a little girl who would help her weed and water. See these sunflowers along the back fence? She planted them because she said every child needed flowers tall enough to hide behind during games of hide and seek. The physical work changed me in ways I hadn't expected. My body grew lean and strong from hauling lumber and digging in the garden. But more than that, I felt a peace settling into my bones that I'd never experienced in my previous life of quarterly reports and client presentations, a life spent trying to prove I was worthy of love I would never receive. Each evening, I sat on Jake's front porch and slowly, deliberately, began to rebuild relationships with a family that had never deserved me, but on my terms this time. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a visitor to love. I was standing in the place it had always waited for me. But peace doesn't come without ghosts, and I was about to meet one. David visited first. He brought his wife and twin daughters. But what stopped me was how he approached the workshop. Those lawyer hands, always polished and precise, now hesitant and reverent as he reached for Jake's tools. I never knew what I was missing, he said, sanding the small bookshelf I was building for the elementary school. All those years chasing degrees, trying to impress Mom, I thought that was success. But this, he held up a smooth plank of pine, its grain catching the afternoon light. This feels real. Like I'm finally building something that matters. I didn't look up. Jake would have taught me this because he loved me, I said. Not because he wanted to mold me. Everything your family gave came with strings. But here, love isn't conditional. The words landed. David put down the sandpaper and looked at me, really looked. We failed you, he whispered. Yes, I said. But oddly, your failure led me home. Claire came for Thanksgiving. She entered like she was bracing for a ghost. She didn't expect to find pieces of Marie, pressed flowers and cookbooks, a journal full of dreams for the daughter she never got to raise. We baked pies from Marie's notes. Claire's hands worked the dough like it remembered. Her eyes brimmed with regret. I used to think you didn't need us, she said. I learned not to, I answered. Needing you meant getting hurt. Claire nodded. And now? I looked out at the snow-dusted mountains, at the town that knew my name, not because I earned it, but because I belonged. Now? I'm not alone. Then winter came, with someone I never expected. I was carving toys for the children's Christmas program when I felt a presence in the doorway. It was Dad. He looked smaller somehow, wrapped in a coat too big for him, holding a steaming mug like a peace offering. I've been driving all night, he said. I needed to see what I missed, what I let happen. He wandered the house like a ghost retracing sins, held Jake's notebooks, read Marie's journals, wept like a man who had finally stopped running. Then he sat in the rocking chair Jake built for me and broke. I failed you, he whispered. I saw what she did. I knew, but I stayed silent. I chose comfort over courage, silence over you. You didn't just fail me, I said. You chose her. Every time. You let me suffer because standing up was too hard. He flinched. No defense. Just, I know. I leaned forward. Then tell me, what are you going to do about it now? That night, he made the call. We sat shoulder to shoulder when Mom answered on the first ring. Her voice cracked. Sarah, she gasped. Oh, God. I'm so sorry. For everything. I know, I said. I read your diary. I tried to love you, she cried. But every time I looked at you, I saw my failure. My broken body. You were Marie's child, and I couldn't compete. I stepped outside. Snow blanketed the garden Marie once hoped to walk me through, naming every flower one by one. I forgive you, I said. But more than that, I thank you. Thank me, she whispered. If you had loved me, I might have stayed. I might have chased crumbs forever. But your rejection made me search. And that search led me home. A long pause. Then, I want to visit, she said. I want to see where my daughter finally found home. Spring came early to Millfield. And with it, her. Mom's old blue Honda pulled into the gravel driveway like a ghost returning to the scene. From Jake's workshop window, I watched her sit there for 10 whole minutes. Hands gripped the steering wheel, face frozen like stone, as if stepping out meant confronting every buried truth she'd spent a lifetime pretending didn't exist. When she finally opened the door, the creak of it cut through the morning air like a confession. I met her at the porch, the same porch where Jake and Marie once dreamed of the daughter they never got to keep. She looked smaller, worn down by time, and for a flicker of a moment, I didn't see the cold woman from my childhood. I saw the one who used to hum lullabies half asleep, the one whose scent clung to my memories even when I tried to forget her. She blinked through tears, looking around. It's beautiful here, she whispered. It looks like the kind of place where a child could grow up safe. Wanted. I didn't answer. I just showed her. Jake's workshop, still heavy with the scent of cedar and oil. Marie's garden, sprouting fragile shoots of life. The attic toy chest, my name carved by hand. And the journals. Stacks of Marie's aching, loving, hopeful handwriting. A lifetime of love spilled onto paper for the child she never got to raise. Mom cried then. Not quiet tears, but years' worth of grief. The kind you cry when you're finally ready to admit you were wrong. As we knelt in the garden together, planting tomatoes, her voice cracked. I adopted you because I couldn't have children, she said softly. They told us we couldn't conceive, and I wanted a baby so badly. You were that miracle. She paused, eyes locked on the soil. Then 2 years later, David came. Then Claire. I thought, maybe this was what a real family looks like. And somewhere along the way, I let go of you. I told myself you didn't need much. You were strong. You were quiet. You could handle it. I felt the weight of her words settle between us like stones. I was wrong, she whispered. I left you to fend for yourself, while I poured everything into them. And by the time I realized what I'd done, how I'd failed you, it felt too late. I looked at my dirt-covered hands, at the little green shoots pushing through the earth. But if you hadn't failed me, I said, voice steady, I wouldn't have run. I wouldn't have met Jake or Marie. I wouldn't have learned to survive or to forgive. That night, we went to the town potluck. I expected her to shrink into a corner. Instead, she surprised me. She smiled. She laughed. She told stories about me. Not the cruel ones I braced for, but the kind you tell with fondness. She told Eleanor how I used to line up teddy bears like soldiers, whispering bedtime stories to them as if they were real. I thought it meant she didn't need anyone, she said, her voice trembling. But now, I think she was preparing herself to be alone. Eleanor touched her shoulder gently. Children don't need perfect, she said. They just need love that shows up, even if it's late. On her last morning, we sat on the porch swing as the sun lit the mountains gold. She reached for my hand, hesitantly, like someone afraid of being refused. I'm proud of you, Sarah, she said. Not for surviving, but for becoming who you are. A woman who didn't let the pain turn her cruel. Who found love, even after being denied it. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I used to think you broke me, I said. But maybe you taught me what love isn't. And that helped me recognize what love should be. She turned to me, eyes brimming but unflinching. Not looking at the child she lost. Not the guilt. Just me. I love you, Sarah, she said. And this time, I didn't doubt it. I love you too, Mom. And just like that, the silence between us cracked open, not with noise, but peace. As her car disappeared around the bend, the last piece of my old identity dissolved. I wasn't the disappointment at dinner parties. I wasn't the adoptee who never quite fit. I was Sarah Hoffman, daughter of Jake and Marie, claimed, seen, loved by a town that waited 27 years for me. The revenge was complete, not through fire or fury, but through grace, love, and becoming everything they said I'd never be. I hadn't destroyed them. I'd outgrown them. Their cold, conditional love had no power here. I'd found something warmer, deeper, something real. That evening, I sat in Jake's chair and opened the diary to the last page. Mom's words no longer felt like an ending, but a seed that had finally bloomed. I picked up Jake's pen and wrote, June 15th, 2025. Mom, your prayer was answered. I found them. The family who sees me. The life that was always mine to live. Thank you for the truth. Thank you for the search. I carry all of you with me. All love, Sarah. I closed the diary, set it beside Jake's journals and Marie's garden notes. All of it mine now. Not born from bitterness, but healing. Outside, kids laughed. The porch swing creaked. The train whispered low. And, in that quiet, I didn't just win. I came home. If you like stories about secrets, revenge, and emotional reckonings, go ahead and subscribe. New stories every week that hit deep.